anywhere. You have to sit down and
welcome. My name is Obeng Darko. Welcome. Today I want to talk with you about African culture and African consciousness. They just struck me the other time that there's a big difference between the two. Growing up in Ghana, I was born into a community. We grew up with a culture. We grew up seeing how children were named, children were trained, how you had to relate with your parents, we had to relate with our grandparents, the big funeral, going to church, going to school, going to farm. We grew up with that, so that was not a problem. But what I did not know was that there's another level. So we could see our chiefs. They will dress in kente with all those, they will be there, but there will be gatherings. And so if you were born on the continent, you are aware of some level of culture. And culture is an educational system for a group of people. It could be in a family. Even you may have your own personal culture. It's good. The culture that we had in Ghana, helped us from the colonizers destroying us. It kept us, and that's why you can see, if you go to any African country where the culture is very loud, at least there's that sense of pride of the people. They believe that they have something. But there is another level that the culture did not teach us, and that is the consciousness. And that one is a deliberate attempt to undo everything, that every lie, every institution, every control that the people who came here over the last 400, 500 years try to do to the African person and the African image and the African dignity. That one must be taught consciously, constructively, intentionally. And so if you have not studied this subject as an African, you could dress, you could have African name, you could be very proud. Some of them may not even, like the woman, you could be very proud African, but they would want to bleach. Or some African men could be very proud, but they're very, happy to wear the suit and the tie and to speak the British English. And so I think that the foundation of our education should not just be the culture, but more importantly, the consciousness, the African consciousness. Because until we know the right history, the consciousness is built out of our sense of the depth of the history of Africa that we know. That not the history that is taught by the Europeans, no, but the history that is taught out of our heroism, out of the people who fought, even the history before our encounter with the Europeans and our encounter with the Arabs. All the things that we conquered, the people who stood and fought and protected us, the achievement, our scientific advancement, our technological advancement, our great business empires, our great kingdoms, and our great civilizations that were built thousands of years ago. Those things have been intentionally kept from majority of Africans. So Africans who are even very cultural may not necessarily have any idea of this. And I dare say that without the consciousness, as the world has become, growing up, you will hear a lot of things. And even if you watch TV, they raise everything that is not African as the standard. And anything that is the African is the substandard. And so the diasporas, the Africans who were taken out of here, to America, to Jamaica, to all those, anything that they could see about Africa, if they just watch the TV, if they just read the newspaper, it will never be anything good. And that's why most of them will not want to have anything to do with Africa, until they start to have the consciousness, which is built out of deliberate education, from the history that is not taught by the Europeans, but us, our great teachers, our great preachers, our great authors. So until you have had contact with a conscious African material, it's so likely that you as an African, you are not even conscious. And consciousness is being you're no more asleep. You're now proud of your heritage. If you have wealth, you give it to your people. If you're looking for courage and capacity, you will not say that everybody else has it but your people. If you see any African who is trying to attribute wisdom and knowledge and advancement to Europeans, but when it comes to the African, in the same vein, he puts the Africans down, that is an African who could be cultured, but who is zero in terms of the consciousness. So there is not been any material that is studied. So I have friends who are doctors, who are engineers, who are bankers, who will put materials, Africans, who will put materials that obviously put their own people down, or they read a text and they will agree with it. And sometimes on our WhatsApp platforms, you see some of these things. I say that this one was written by somebody who was born on the continent, because I can guarantee you, majority of us who were born on the continent have no awareness of the consciousness that is required for us to be a people who are proud of our heritage. And I'm not talking about Independence Day celebrating. You're celebrating Independence Day and wearing your gente. I said I'm a proud Ghanaian. No, I'm talking of the one who is using wealth, business, technology, policies to upgrade his people, to build the wealth. You're not the one trying to look at, this is the contract, let's give it to the Chinese. The Chinese companies are far advanced, let's give it to them. Let's give this business to the foreigners. And when it comes to your people, we say that we can't trust them. They are not trustworthy. They are not capable. They are poor. If you are like that, you have no idea of the African consciousness. It's because you have not encountered any material, you have not read any good material on Africa. And I dare say that majority of Africans are in this category. There are those who have no sense of culture at all. They just would wear anything because they were born into it. And there are those who are conscious, who are aware of the culture, but they have not upgraded to the next levels. So that's why you can see a lot of our chiefs have culture, but they don't have the consciousness. So that's why they are waiting for some young European to come and help them to dig a pit as toilet, because there's no consciousness. Once you see the conscious African, you see a proud, courageous, productive, dependable African. And you will never see a great African leader who does not have the consciousness that I'm talking of. And so if you have any African leader who has no consciousness, you will see it. Corruption will be very high. You will not trust his people. You give all the opportunities to foreigners. You give power to foreigners, you give wealth to foreigners, you will not be able to stand up against the colonizers and what they continue to do to destroy the continent. And they will not even put right materials in educating the next generation, because they are not aware, they are asleep. And there are many Africans that are in that category. And if anybody wants to destroy you, they will change that history. And a lot of Africans, I went to school in Ghana, and the first degree, I had not read any good material on the history of Africa, apart from the few the scattered ones that they taught us in I think in Jesus. But that was not something that I could be proud of. The moment I got hold of that material, living somewhere I never had problem moving to Ghana to live and to build my life, because then I saw myself differently. Until the mind of the African is decolonized, until the mind of the African is repaired, the African cannot be conscious. And it really is not in any best universities anyway. So it really does not matter which kind of so-called best universities that an African goes to. It could be any top university, Yale, Harvard, Oxford, it doesn't matter. Or even Legon or Kwabena. If that person has not been taught consciously, that African cannot be trusted and cannot be dependent on. And we have a lot of them. And so when they come into contact with a big contract, they think of themselves first. The unconscious African is selfish and corrupt and will take for only himself. He will never think of his people, because he does not even see the pain of his people. The African who will see the pain of his people is the African who is awake. Or somebody will say awoke. You're right. So that is what we need to restore. And so sometimes when you engage in debate, when you engage in discussions, you have to really know where this African stands, whether it's conscious or it's just a cultured African who's not conscious. And a lot of us are not in that category yet, because that kind of information that will lift the African, a lot of things have been done to keep that kind of information from the African. A lot of it. How many times do you see the books of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah? Or you see the book of Chancellor Williams? But you see every book of Shakespeare and all those guys. And their books are not meant for us. Their books were written for their people. I mean, even if they are lying, it really does not matter who is lying. What matters is, do you have the truth? Because it does not matter the quantum of the lies that they have. If you have a little of the truth, then you'll be okay. And so the moment you see yourself as an African who is very frustrated, because you see a lot of Africans who really want to see Africa develop, but they get frustrated because they see the challenge as very enormous. The problem that we have is the consciousness, and it's based on the materials that we've been fed with. And all those materials were designed to put us to sleep and to disable our ability to think for ourselves. Never forget that, our ability to think for ourselves. So every day we go to church, the information that they are giving to us, much of those information we cannot use for anything. And yet we are being judged by what we are not doing as a people in our community, in our country, in our continent. If you go to a place all your time and all that information they're giving you, a lot of the teachers, whether in our universities, whether in our schools, or whether in our religious settings, our churches and mosques, a lot of our teachers have no African consciousness. And therefore they cannot wake the people up. They can't. And that's why you have been listening to them for 30 years. Look at the results. Are you happy with the results? If you're happy with the results, no problem. If the wealth and the power is with the Africans, then they're perfect. A lot of our teachers themselves are asking a lot of questions, because the material they themselves were giving, they were not giving the truth. They were giving the things that will make them proud and fight. And so I'm saying that a lot of things that have pushed data, information, knowledge on us, if you see any knowledge that is so much available to the African, that knowledge will never save the African. That knowledge will never free the African. The knowledge that will free the African is not available on the street. It's been kept from them. Never forget that. Any knowledge that is available every day that we hear, every Sunday, every Wednesday, that we hear in the news. You see the way we promote the sports and the entertainment, the politics that we do on our radio every day, those kind of things will never build the country. That which will build the country is that which will repairing the self-doubt that the Africans have of themselves, because that's where it starts. The foundation of education is the consciousness, is the history that they have about themselves as a great people. The moment a people can see themselves as great, as powerful, as able, they will not wait for anybody to come and help them. From there, you can then give them all the other kind of information. Then you can teach them business, you can teach them governance, you can teach them finance, you can teach them marriage. But until they have good sense of themselves, then all the other things that you continue to teach them, they are useless, because they will not be able to do anything with them, because they don't believe that they have the capacity. So my name is Kwabena Darko. I'm talking about, there are two kinds of Africans. There is the conscious African and there is the cultured one. There is somebody who says, I'm cultured, So this Saturday I will go for funeral of my grandmother. You see a lot of them wearing with all the umbrella and all the music and the dance. They are good. But the same people will then go and look for visa and travel to America. And if you ask them about Ghana, they will say, Ghana, there's no hope here. Talk to any young man. He will dress all the Kotoko JC and go and shout in the sports stadium. And then the next day he's looking for visa to travel to England because he believes that there's no opportunity here. The problem is that the young man is not conscious. He's aware of his culture to a certain limit. He may even be proud of it, but he's not conscious. He doesn't believe that he has what it takes. He's not even aware of the wealth that he has. So he's ready to work for little money for a Chinese guy who is doing galamsey in his own land. The gold belongs to him, but he's able to go and work for 20 cedis a day because he's been put to sleep. And a lot of Africans have been put to sleep. So the people that you can depend on, the Africans that you can depend on. So a lot of the times we hear of the problem of Africa is African leadership. No. It's the process that is producing that leadership. It's not so much the leader, because the leader is going to do what he's made of, what he knows, the content that he has. So if the leader is not conscious of who he is as an African and all the complexities and the systems that have been put in place to stop him and his people from progressing, that leader will go there and nothing will change, because then he will not be able to build a counteractive system that is helping his people to become prosperous. Never underestimate our contact with the Europeans and the damage that those Europeans have done to the African being and the African personality. And a lot of the materials that have come out of that have been very much destructive to the Africans. Whether everything that they are teaching, almost everything that they are teaching in their institutions and their schools, they never bring the best out of the Africans, because they raise everybody else and put the African down. And I'm saying that any institutions that they established, they led and left, and the Africans are continuing. The systems in place are designed to put the Africans to sleep. So they could be cultural, It could be, and even there are a lot of Africans who are now they have no sense of culture at all, let alone consciousness. They will bleach, they will do all kind of things, and they have no regard for their people. They have no pride in their people. They will even change their name, and they are more allegiant to their religion than to their continent, and they turn around to accuse their own people for not developing, and they will side with anybody who insult their people, their leadership, their elders, who talk against them and tell you that there's no opportunity here, they are incapable, they are not trustworthy. These people, it does not even matter whether they are leaders or they are business people, they have money. It really does not matter. There are a lot of Africans who have critical leadership in African countries who have no consciousness at all. They may have money, but they have no consciousness at all. And you can see it because they can't see the pain of their people. They can't relate with it because they are asleep. They are asleep. And so once you see pride, you see African dignity, you see strength, you see character, you see courage, you see an African who is conscious. You can also see the culture and still see shallowness. But we are looking at those who are strong. You can produce strong Africans who are not conscious. And so that is the first step of education. So if you're looking at educating your children, then look for that. If they are not conscious Africans, and I'm saying that is constructively done. That is an education that has to be intentionally done, where you're teaching them about their history beyond slavery and colonization. And even during that period, the things that their ancestors stood and fought. When you hear somebody say that they sold their people, you have no idea how many Africans fought, killed, prevented the Europeans from taking over Africa. You have no idea. The fact that we are still alive, that means that our people fought back. So when you hear any African, we sold our people are, bad, we are this, that is an African who has no consciousness at all. He has no data, no information, and he doesn't even think that is needed, is important. And he continue to blame himself and blame his own people forever until he wakes up. And nothing will wake him up than the knowledge of self, the knowledge, the right history that is beyond the lies that the Europeans have taught us through their religion and through the schools that they left, and even through their movies and through their media, the government structures, and how the world runs. So we have a tough time, and sometimes you have to look at it for the next 100, 200 years, what we're doing, where we will raise a people who will be so much proud and not doubt themselves and believe in themselves and respect themselves. The Europeans also need this because they have also been lied to. They've been lied to. A lot of people have been lied to. The Europeans are included, largely. Most of their top corporate executives have been lied to. They think that they are the best of the humans and they deserve everything, and nobody else deserves anything, and that they are the richest. A lot of people who live in the West don't know that the life that they live is bondage. They have no idea. They have no clue because they've been lied to. They've been conditioned. They've been brainwashed, just as the Africans have been brainwashed to believe that they have nothing. And so even if they have gold, they still don't see that. So I want to say thank you very much for watching the African the African culture and the African consciousness. You will never wake up and see your heritage and your greatness and be happy and fulfilled and purposeful and be selfless and be driven by character and courage until you are a cultured African and you are a conscious African. You need it too. So I want to say thank you very much for watching.